Hello, my name is John Hosek here at Accent Decor, and I wanted to show you a little bit of some fun stuff with a product called wool. Kevin had mentioned a couple T2s ago, you probably have seen it. The wool that we work with is actually goat's wool, which is actually fantastic because once it gets wet, it has no issue of fragrance, because sometimes lamb's wool has a little bit of an aroma to it, so to speak, if you know what we mean. And also it actually repels the water, which I think is fantastic. So what I've done actually is speed a little bit further through this, and you can see what a fun little, we talk about principles and elements of design, repetition and form, how this plays. But I've taken a little bit of aluminum wire and I've made sure each one of my spear ends are very sharply pointed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to refeed this through my wool. And if you take one layer at a time, it makes it a smidge easier. It's kind of like just threading. So I'll actually just do one of these, and I'll snip the rest of that off just to make it a little bit easier. Just piercing it right through one side and down another. And I just keep bunching these, keeping my little wires straight on each side, and just scrunching them up. Very technical term, so to speak. So I'm going to take my needle nose pliers, and again, I talked about that finishing elements, making sure our coils at the ends of our wires are finished. I think makes it much prettier. Finishing these little kids off right here. And again, we can twist it a little bit further to give us a little more of a decorative element to it, because I think we're looking for a lot of design things that really make our designs just go, wow, I can't believe how fantastic that is. So I'm going to take a little of this extra wool off, save it, because you can always use those for some fun other little pieces to put in there. So now I have this great line with the wool as it's starting to move back and forth, and I'm going to use these great little Ava vases. These are just spectacular, and this technique works really well with a container with a neck to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down in the center of my wool, and I'm going to separate my two colors. You've seen I've used the hot pink and the orange, and I have my two grids on top and bottom. So as I separate this, I'm going to put it through and making sure I get through both levels. So as you see, it's right there. And the catch for myself, and I love to make sure my mechanics are sound, I do not want anything to ever happen with my mechanics. What I like to do is I'm going to take the aluminum wire, I'm going to spool it once around the neck, because we think of transportation a lot of times, we want to make sure that this isn't going to go away, so that really gives us that element to the top and bottom. And we can scrunch these little troopers. How yummy this starts to become, little colors together. Do it again. One more little Ava vase. And what's great is we start to manipulate these back and forth, it really will let us play around with where we want to put them. And if you really wanted to, you can just bring the wool all the way down on the container itself. Find my little wire spot here. Again, I'm going to noose it around the neck of my container again, the little Ava vase. Holds that little mechanical binding there. And one last but not least, we'll stretch them out here a little bit more. It's like a little clam, kind of these little shells of the clam. You open them up and you find a little treasure on the inside, and that's kind of, I think, where this design really becomes very fun. So we noosed our third little kid through, and again, taking my aluminum wire, looping it around the neck, and now we can readjust these. If we want to, we can scooch this down and cover that up. I want to leave one of them exposed just so that it really becomes a fun play. And we can manipulate the wire, will allow us to move the container. I'm going to stretch this out just a little bit here. And that really gives us a great little rhythm. And how fun that becomes. I'm going to add a little bit of water to this. Oops. So as we start filling these little containers up, I mean, it really has a great motion just with the wool itself. And there again, I've got a little bit extra water. It's going to bead right off. It's not going to cause any issue. It's dye fast, and it really holds extremely well. We won't fill that one quite so full. And again, there's so much fun color and texture happening with the wool itself right now. We really don't need a ton of floral. What I like to do is I like to do some crossing of lines a lot of times with the design. We have this great motion happening. Taking just a little bit of our lily grass, and I'm just going to make it really quick and easy. We'll put a couple this direction and a couple this direction. And what I'm going to do is, for myself, I like to make sure that they don't fall out, come out. I'm going to bend its ends over, put these down into they get caught on that little lip, so it becomes this great little repetition. And again, bend their little tips over here. What a fun little play that is. Kind of like these little kids being off to the side. I think I might even just do a little quick knot here to carry my line down to the container, to the base of the table. Gives it a really nice flow. Bend them up again one more time. That one doesn't want to play fair. There we go. But you just get this great little motion, and just how fun a few little stems of orchids can really be a great play. Do a little lateral cut here, and if we're doing a little party setting, how nice to have a few of them on the table, but just a few little blossoms really just make it so spectacular. And I did a little lateral cut on that, so I have another extra little stem there. I don't even have to use my third stem. We can put that little guy there. We start getting this motion that's starting to happen. And even just the placement of just a few little roses, how these become just a yummy little factor in this design. Take a little bit of the foliage off. I love seeing the absence of foliage because we have all this great texture with the wool that's coming through. We truly don't need a whole lot of greens in the picture. Let's put one little accent here and one last little one to come into it. Take a couple of those little guard petals off. And how fun that becomes a play when we start looking at the color and the textures. A few little orchid blossoms down to the rhythm of the wool. I just really love it. And also the metal and the glass and the Ava vase. Hope you've liked or enjoyed our little T2 with Woolly. Thank you so much.